Week 7 is in the books, and delighted to go over a little bit about a crazy week in the NFL. It's never boring, that's for sure. You're listening to the Gridiron Podcast Network on a Monday morning. Michael McQuaid here. Delighted to be joined with, from Touchdown Trips, Ben Mortimer. Ben, great to have you on to talk some football. How are you doing on this early Monday morning?
I've had worse Monday mornings, to be honest, because my Ravens won last night. So I think any sort of NFL fan will relate that if you do get that sort of late Sunday boost of a win, it really does put you into the week in a lot better frame of mind. And there's nothing like, last week it was a horrible loss. Yeah, you have a rough night's sleep and you go in and you think, I've got to live with this all week till next Sunday. But having a win behind you definitely sort of put some wind in your sails. So I'm pretty good.
Good to hear, man. It was a really interesting week 7 in the league just generally, and I know we'll talk about different elements. So you got your whole Rodgers Brady element there, and sort of different games as well. And we'll even maybe take a look forward to your team playing on Thursday night. And I know you're a Ravens fan, so let's even just jump in on that there for now. Obviously, the Ravens moving to 4-3 on the season after a win against the Browns on Sunday. I really thought, Ben, before this game started on Sunday, I had picked the Ravens to win the game, but I really thought that this could be not a banana skin type sort of game, but the Browns are very sort of thorough in their defense. They try and come up towards the end of the game. We've seen what the Ravens done against the Giants, and I'd say you were sitting last night at one point, hand in your heart, sort of praying that they get over the line, and they did get over the line. But the thing for me is, I don't think the stats really show the sort of the true essence of the game offensively. Lamar Jackson didn't have any passing touchdowns, but he still ran for 60 yards in the day, and the team on the offense got the job done. And frankly, they were quite fun to watch, man. I see as a neutral, I really enjoyed watching them yesterday, and it makes you think, how can this team progress throughout the season, especially now they got 4 wins on their back?
Yeah, I think one of the positives is that hopefully there is a lot of room for progression, because I think they're still not really finding themselves. And yesterday was really it was a close game. There were times, I mean, obviously they gave up an early touchdown. It seemed to me that they were quite flat starting the game again, and it had one of those feels to it. You can sort of hear, if you watch a game every week, kind of when the crowd are into it too. And it started off that kind of way. It looked a bit grey, and you thought, yeah, this could be a bad day at the office. I think there's a couple of things up with the Ravens. Obviously, the glaring one is the inability to hold a lead in the fourth quarter, and obviously that didn't happen. They managed to get over the line yesterday, as you said, not without a bit of difficulty and a little help from the Browns. I think the false start for the field goal that would have potentially tied the game. It was still a long field goal. Definitely wasn't a gimme, but that extra 5 yards made it about 60 yards, and it was untouched and horrendous effort in the end. The 60-yard attempt for the Browns that kind of sealed the game for the Ravens. You don't get that help every week from teams, and it kind of raised an ugly spectre from the past for the Browns of kind of making critical mistakes at crucial moments in games. I think defensively, the Ravens are still fairly soft compared to how they've played previously. That might be down to getting used to a new DC in Mike McDonald and playing a different way, not playing as aggressively or blitz happy as Wink Martindale had them play. But there does seem to be a bit of a lack of identity about the Ravens defense at the moment, and also an inability to make plays when it matters. So that's something that needs to be addressed if they're going to do anything this year. And I think with the offense, Lamar isn't quite himself, and there's a lot of speculation as to whether that's contract related and some sort of disquiet from him as far as what went on in the off season, whether it's just getting the rhythm going because of the sort of carousel of running backs that have been coming in, and also the changes to the offensive line. I mean, Ronnie Stanley is nearly back, but he's still kind of being pitch counted at the moment, and so there's not the consistency that maybe would have been there in, say, 2019 when he had the MVP season and he was explosive, and it was a extremely foreboding offense to handle for any defensive coordinator. But there's the good thing, as I said, though, to start with, is that there is actually lots of scope for improvement, because I think this team is better than the 4-3 record indicates as far as talent level. But your record is what it is, and the reason that they are 4-3 is because of giving up very, very late leads, and that obviously needs to be remedied, because that's a critical part of a successful team, is being able to close and also having the will and the fortitude to do so. So I don't feel particularly great about yesterday's win. I'm glad that they got it, because I think on the balance of play they deserve to. But whenever you get, and they had a 10-point lead fairly late again going into the game, but whenever you go into the fourth quarter and the other team are on offense, and you, after the season we've watched, you just don't have any kind of inkling or faith that the defense are going to be able to stop them. And obviously you're playing against arguably the best running back in the NFL, in Nick Chubb yesterday as well, who, the Ravens have been no slouches at stopping the run. They did a pretty good job against Barkley last week, but Chubb's a different proposition, and he was having his way a lot. And I was kind of a little bit, I think the Browns panicked a bit and got away from running him as much as they could have in the fourth quarter, which might have made a difference. So, it's just a relief to come out with a W. And onwards to Tampa. But there's a lot of work to do in Baltimore. I think it just doesn't feel quite right at the moment as far as the whole team.
I genuinely think as well now, Ben, that okay, it might not feel quite right yet, but I can see the signs there already. The fact that they did limit Chubb to under 100 yards, I'll take that as a pro. And sort of, I know he ran at one point really well. I think an average of 5.7 yesterday. The one thing for a lot of people who are maybe not Ravens fans, but general NFL fans, and maybe to have their fantasy team yesterday, or they were listening to the Gridiron Pick Show last week, Mark Andrews said yesterday before the game that he was feeling good, ready to go. He finished yesterday with, I'll just confirm this now, zero receiving, 0 yards. He did have that memorable quarterback play, but it's just interesting that he wasn't utilised. Or do you think that was maybe, sort of great on the Browns side as well, to try and stop him from getting into the game? Because that's one thing that they can try and work on. I think in week 1 he didn't score a touchdown, he comes in week 2, scores touchdowns, and it is very stop-start, but there are a lot of positives there in terms of, I mean, I really like Duvernay and I can't wait to see what he's going to do, Bateman, but Andrews was just AWOL yesterday, man, completely.
Yeah, he was, and he has been until yesterday. So certainly the last few weeks, it seems that even if you sort of double team him, he finds a way of out strengthening any defender that's on him and shrugging him off like a irritating little bug and catching the ball. So it was a bit surprising, but then luckily Lamar's got about 27 of the tight ends to throw to, so that's the positive. And they've been trying to get guys like Isaiah Likely into the game more, and he had a couple of grabs yesterday, which was nice to see. Duvernay's been kind of the lead guy for us this year. He's always had, I mean, coming out of college, he was known for having great hands, and also being a playmaker. I mean, he's arguably the most dangerous return guy in the league, and he runs very crisp routes and has really, really safe hands, as I said. So it's nice to see him get some recognition. I think that the Ravens, some of the peripheral receivers have got kind of a hard shake of things from a kind of outsider's point of view, because obviously the Ravens game is predicated on Lamar and the run so much, and it's a very tight end heavy that I've seen way worse Ravens receivers cores than are currently there right now. So it was good to see Duvernay. It was really good to see Rashad Bateman back as well, because he's been out with a foot injury for a couple of weeks, and he needs to be involved more, because I still believe that a healthy Bateman is a borderline WR1, and he hasn't really had the chance to shine yet. Going to Mark Andrews, you're going to have games like that. Even super stud tight ends are going to have games like that. So the encouraging thing is that they still found ways to move the ball without him. It was great to see Gus Edwards back as well, who is head and shoulders above any of the sort of free agent running backs that the Ravens have brought in, while him and J.K. Dobbins were missing. So, I think balancing that, it's if you take away one weapon, but then you can still move the ball and get points with other weapons, that's the sign of a good offense going in the right direction. And going back to Lamar, I mean, even though he didn't light up, because we only had 17 pass attempts, I think it was yesterday, and Lamar referred to that in the press conference after the game. But even with that, it was a game that was won against the opponents that were put in front of them. I don't think that that Greg Roman had a terrible game play calling offensively, and there's also, you always get this with fan bases. There's a section of fan bases that pick up on a coach or a coordinator and just say everything is him. So, giving up fourth quarter leads, fire Greg Roman. It's like he's not coordinating the defense. So, but I think it was called pretty well. And again, going back to Lamar, we had a couple of key QB runs for Lamar where he picked up crucial first downs in a way that only Lamar Jackson can. So I'm hopeful, like some other QBs that we might talk about later, that there is room for improvement this year. And while you're going through growing pains, it's good to still have a winning record. And I think the last thing to touch on with the Ravens as well is that they do sit in a pretty bad division this year with the AFC North. So it's kind of looking like it's going to be between them and the Bengals this year. And obviously they already have the tie break on the Bengals with the win at M&T. So it's just going to be a case, I think, of those two going at it for the rest of the year.
I would go as far as saying if the Ravens were an NFC team, you'd be a very happy man right now, because the NFC just looks like a complete free for all in that sense. Ravens play the Bucs on Thursday night this week in Tampa Bay. Tell me this, as a fan, there couldn't be a better time to play Brady and the Bucs, is there? Because the performance yesterday, Ben, in my opinion, actually gave Brady too much credit. He went down to having 290 passing yards, 32 for 49. I'm not sure if you've seen the last sort of series of play. He couldn't get the passes together. He was thrown to the ground. The disappointment in his face and the anger was just, it was borderline concerning. If you take Mike Evans out of it, he had 96 receiving yards on the day. There was one play at the start of the game where he should have caught it and went to the house. He caught it and then dropped it and put it up in the air. It was comical. Lenny couldn't get anything on the run game. I look personally at that Ravens team and I look at the situation in which Brady's in. He's came back into the league this season. He's lost to Trubisky. He's now lost to PJ Walker. But the manner in which the Bucs have lost and the manner in which Brady has played in those games makes me think that the Ravens are a home run on Thursday night. You must be a confident man going into Thursday.
No, I'm never confident especially going into primetime games in Florida, because the Ravens historically just don't do well in them. I don't know why, but they lost last year. I think it was last year to the Dolphins in a really, really ugly loss there. I remember numerous trips to Jacksonville where they've been, awful and somehow found a way to beat us. So I'm never confident going in on a short week on a road game, even though, yes, they're admittedly playing a weak, misfiring Bucs team right now. The guy sat behind me, actually, Harry, is a Bucs fan, so he's just keeping his head down and trying to ignore what I'm saying. But
has he been quiet all morning? Yeah, he's not saying much.
I mean,
it's one thing though, Ben. Like even just generally, like as someone like yourself that's watched the league for many years, do you think Brady should have come back? Because now it's actually a bit sad to see how he's playing the last few games, and I just can't see where. Granted, they're only 3-4, right? They're not completely gone here in any way, shape, or form, especially in the NFC, but it's so inconsistent. Like that Chiefs game a few weeks ago, we had 3 passing touchdowns, and now he couldn't get the ball down the field yesterday. It's concerning.
I agree with you, Michael. I think, and we could come back to eat these words, because I think the one thing you have to remember is we're talking about Tom Brady. So it's people have ruled him out his entire career, and it wouldn't surprise me if he somehow he eats 3 Weetabix and comes back and is able to get those balls downfield into the hands of his receivers. I think the early drop may have broken him yesterday. I mean, just having seen that, it was awful, wasn't it? It was, Mike Evans managed to bump and run, get away, a ridiculous separation. He was all on his own, and then kind of just started to juggle the ball 20 yards in front of him, and there was no catch there. And whether that sets the tone, I don't know. I think also with Brady, to give some mitigating factors, he lost key pieces of an offensive line that he was used to in the off season. So he's obviously lost a guy that I'm familiar with, Ryan Jensen, the excellent centre who's out pretty much injured all year, and then he had Ali Marpet and Alex Kappa as well that went via retirement and free agency. So I think it's tough to get that confidence sometimes, but I think, yes, I agree. Physically, he looks like you can see this with older QBs, and you never know when it's going to happen. And it hadn't quite happened to him last year, which is probably why he felt there was unfinished business. That this team, was hopefully mainly sticking together and could give him another run. An unprecedented sort of career in the NFL with another Super Bowl, but. It reminds me a little bit of sort of Peyton Manning's last year, but he had an incredible defense to make him basically a game manager. It also reminds me of 2006 when the Ravens brought in Steve McNair, and he had a great regular season, but you could see week to week that the zip in the throws that were there early season were kind of leaving him to the point where it got to the AFC divisional game against the Colts, and it just wasn't there anymore. And he came back in the following year, and it had completely gone. And you could just see that he was a year past it. And I think that's the shame with Brady, is that it would have been basically the perfect legacy would have been retiring in this off season after a strong run into the playoffs, still looking pretty much like the Brady of old. But now it's just looking like the old Brady. So I think I agree with you that. On the balance of everything, he probably should have hung him up last year.
I could have been Tom Brady on the phone there now. I love it.
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. I really think, Ben, and people will slate me for this, I think he should have walked away when he won it a couple of years ago. Granted, there was a whole different circumstances. It was a year like no other, but I just don't see a situation in which you can go out and top in any better way. And you talked about Peyton Manning there and McNair, but Manning was... Even as a fan of that team, Manning was poor that year, and he had guys like I know he had that superb defense, but he had the run game working for him. He could just hand it off, and he knew it was going to be fine. And it's sort of sad that it's ended up like this. And look, we could completely eat our words. Like I could be texting you on Friday morning, and the Bucks could beat the Ravens and go 4-4 in the season, and who knows what's going to happen. But I think it's the manner in which it happened, and it's really strange because we were talking off screen about Aaron Rodgers as well, and I know like he was in London a couple of weeks ago and you had some representatives at that game. Do you think, even without talking about his play, do you think it's a valid excuse to say that somebody of his talent doesn't have the correct sort of set of wide receiver core there? Or, the way that I see it is the Commanders went in yesterday with Taylor Heineke and still found a way to beat Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. Do you think it's an excuse on the Packer side to say that they just don't have the best people to throw the ball to? I mean, like, Alan Lazard is fine. Sammy Watkins has played with multiple good quarterbacks over the last few years, and Amari Rodgers, and he's not getting on with Dobbs. There's not a substantial come down in relation to Tom Brady, but do you think it's time to panic for the Packers, or do you think they can get it together? They're sitting 3-4 as well, and the NFC this year is just cooked, Ben, isn't it? It's completely cooked, and... who on earth outside the Eagles is going to be the second best team there? I just can't find one.
It's you're right. I mean, there's a conference. It's a bit of a shambles, and even in the division that the Packers find themselves in, they have a chance. In that you've got the Lions, who are now 1-5, and 1-6. Can't remember. I think it's 1-5 because they had a bye week already.
1-5, yeah.
Bears are awful, and then the Vikes, probably arguably at the moment the best team in the division, but it's not saying a lot, is it? So I think Rodgers himself said, he still has the Rodgers swagger and the confidence to kind of say, we'll figure it out. We're not out of it yet. They're only 3-4, aren't they? So I think from a selfish point of view, for wanting a lot of people to be happy, I'd really like them to turn it around because we have, and we'll talk more about the work stuff later, but the UK and Irish Packers going out for the double header against the Cowboys and the Titans next month, and it would be a shame were they not to at least see a win on that trip. So obviously the Cowboys, that's probably who I'd say right now as far as talent wise and the ability to make a run. are the second best team in the NFC. It's a close one. I don't think the Giants are. I think the Giants are a really, really efficient, well-drilled, disciplined football team that don't do a lot wrong on either side of the ball. They're not spectacular on either side of the ball, but they don't do a lot wrong on either side. And obviously, I haven't seen that up close against the Ravens last week. They basically waited for the Ravens to shoot themselves in the foot and then capitalized. But I think, I think it's the NFC East is the sort of by far the strongest division in that conference this year. So going back to Rodgers, he was. It's a team game, right? So I mean, the Packers gave up some pretty big plays in the secondary yesterday as well to basically let the Washington back into it. But then you got Terry McLaurin, who's a tremendous receiver. So I mean, he made some great plays too. You have. But yeah, I think trading away basically Rodgers' best weapon when you're basically trying to make a run in the twilight of his career is not the best decision. And you could see that when he does get some time and he kind of gets into that sort of free-flowing Rodgers mode, it's still there. I think his arm is still there, as opposed to Tom Brady. And that play he made yesterday where he kind of came off the left of the line and saw a darting Aaron Jones going into the end zone and just floated a perfect pass just over the head of the defender and into Aaron Jones's arms. That's Aaron Rodgers. But the problem is that he does not have the spread of talent to disperse the ball to. And I think you can see that in his play, and you can see the frustration. So some of the decisions that Rodgers is making where he's basically hauling it down the field and hoping a lot of the time, expecting guys to be able to make plays that maybe they're not capable of doing. And he's also trying just to give them a kick up the backside and say, let's see what you can do with my awesome arm. It's not coming out. It's not working out. So, but even then, at the end of the game, it was, there was nearly a crazy, bizarre end to that where Rodgers himself was involved and they were lateraling all over the place. And then I think it was who was it? It was the tight end or lineman that dropped it in the end, but it was. I think that they're saved by the weakness of their division, and the Green Bay, if they can pick up, a couple of wins here and there, they're probably going to be in it as far as a playoff berth towards the end of the year, provided they can stay in contention in their division. But I'm not sure that, based on the current evidence and the lack of firepower, Rodgers notwithstanding, that they'll be able to do anything more than the wild card round this year.
Next up for them next Sunday is the Bills on Sunday Night Football. That's going to be fun. Rodgers already saying that he's happy to go in as an underdog. Well, he's lost 3 in a row. Packers sitting 3-4. Brady's lost 2 in a row. Bucks are 3-4. Nobody's seen this coming, so it's going to be intriguing to see over the next few weeks what happens there. You've done excellent there, Ben. You've talked about 16 different things with different teams, but has there been anything this season, even 7 weeks in, that's caught your eye as a fan and as someone who watches the game? I mean, you talked about the Giants there. I personally thought yesterday that the Jaguars shot themselves in the foot at the end. Don't get me wrong, the Giants have done extremely well to get to 6-1, and what Brian Dable's doing is superb. I looked at the next gen stats yesterday for Trevor Lawrence, and the amount of incompletions he had in the parts of the field as well was stunning. But the Jags had the ball with the last minute of the game. A flag situation messed it up and they had an extra minute on the clock. Basically, they should have won the game, they didn't. But it's really been that season, Ben, of unpredictability, and Brady talked about it in his press conference saying there's a lot of bad football. I mean, I don't want to start saying that about the league, but I don't think any of us seen where the season was going at the start, even whenever the schedule came out, even in the last week in August. It's been so unpredictable, but I guess that's what we love about this league, and a lot of people always I guess that's what we love about this league, and a lot of people sometimes, especially over here in the UK or Ireland or Europe, if they're trying to get into the league, they're like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm going to watch this. One thing you can say about this league is it's unpredictable to the point where you cannot guess what's going to happen any other week.
Yeah, it's you've summed it up in that you're not getting the highest level of. I don't know whether at the beginning of seasons your players are also acclimating to rule changes in the off season, and you always seem to get kind of a bit more of a season on season leaning towards offense over defense and penalties, and then the refs are getting used to it as well, so they kind of can have a hand in messing up the momentum of games or making ridiculous decisions that swings things against teams that maybe would have been coasting to a win at some point. But it does seem to be that there's a lot of, I mean, touching on Trevor Lawrence, he's kind of a guy that just you see it, but it's not quite there for the sort of promised second coming potential that that Lawrence was coming out of college, and having all the tools required, there just seems to be kind of a killer instinct element missing at the moment, or a inability to cut out really backbreaking mistakes that you kind of are waiting to be eradicated from his game, and it's a bit of an odd one with him because I think it was a penalty, wasn't it? It was a it didn't stay in bounds, didn't he? The opposing player when it was Barkley, wasn't it? He put his foot out of bounds, so that basically bought them an extra minute. And when you're paying, you're basically you're lumping the franchise on the shoulders of a potential franchise QB. That's when they have times to shine, and they should be getting you in position to win a game. So I think maybe players are also, with the longer seasons now, even though it's only one extra game, it's that's still quite a high percentage of add-on football time to how it was, and also the extra week of playoffs. It makes you wonder whether some players are kind of just half gassing it at this point of the season and trying to kind of get themselves, and even teams are trying to get themselves into a position where they're saying, right, at the moment, we need to win by whatever means necessary, but we don't want to open up the full playbook. We don't want to get people injured, and we don't want to play our best football now. We want to do it in November, December. So, and I don't even know whether that sort of subconsciously makes a difference to people at the moment, whereas kind of, they're still kind of in that mode of coming out of a shorter preseason. They're trying to find their feet in the league. And, teams and coordinators and coaches have access to more stats and more video and film than they ever have done. So they're able to actually do a good few days research on a team who maybe played great the previous week and do their job to negate those strengths and make them look bad. So I don't know, because I can't see how the actual talent pool kind of got weaker. If anything, it should have got stronger because it's now tougher to get in the NFL than it ever has been, and there's more kids competing to be football players than there ever has been. So I don't know how it can really be a talent level thing. So I think it must be more of an sort of inherent team ethos coaching thing towards playing better because I think you go to the playoffs and you get to divisional weekend and championship weekend, and the level is still as high as it's ever been.
Absolutely, and I think it's going to take that next step up for the next few weeks. One thing I will say is, in a good way, the NFL season is a grueler. Like, I'm fortunate enough to work in the week to work on the league every week, and I'm finding the grueling 7 weeks in. There's stuff going on from left, right, and centre, and I know you and your job with Touchdown Trips MVP Travel have a very busy time, a very positive time as well. But it's a very, very busy time because you've got a lot of people heading over to the States for games. One thing that I found, Ben, from even starting in Gridiron is we've picked up a real new community over the last 3 to 4 months of fans, and I guess for people that aren't aware of what you do, could you maybe even try and explain that in 30 seconds or a minute just to talk a bit about Touchdown Trips?
Yeah, I mean, basically we just send people to watch what we've been talking about the last half hour, which is hopefully some good NFL football, but and hopefully you've gathered that I'm quite a big fan of the game. But it was important for me when we set this up, the company, to make sure that we included a proper NFL game day. So the vast majority of our packages include a tailgate, like a proper tailgate, not just like going to a tent and getting a couple of drinks and a cold buffet. It's more of a parking lot style, off the back of a flatbed truck barbecue type of thing, with local fans that have been doing it for years and years and years. Stadium tours and things like that. But yeah, for me, it's actually just getting out to the US, seeing a game in an NFL stadium that's normally majority packed with home fans, feeling a sort of partisan atmosphere, and really just enjoying the game that we love watching every week on TV.
Absolutely, and I, for one, I'm actually someone I've been a fan for 12 or 13 years of the NFL now, and I went out to Denver, I think it was in 2017, with Touchdown Trips, and I mean, literally, once it was booked, everything was done from there. Email, tickets sent, everything. And I have to agree on the tailgate element of it, Ben. I think when you go from here over to the States, and especially for the first few times and everything's new, it can be difficult to sort of understand the process and get around. Like going into a private tailgate, and I think we paid something like, it was like $20 or something that was included in the package, and your food, your drink was all included, and you got to talk to people from around the world. It was a great experience. I know you've been around now for a number of years in different elements, not just with the NFL, but different sports also. And there's been some tours with fan groups, also some tours with Gridiron. Has there been any tours that sort of stick out to you in the memory, and ones that you look back on with fond memories yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much look back on all of them with fond memories. We haven't really had a bad one yet. Luckily, going all the way back to the first one we did with Gridiron in 2017, which was we did sort of Houston and the Astros had just won the World Series, which is kind of a full circle type of thing here coming on. They just made it to the World Series, but that was a fun one because we went to New Orleans, and there's the first time that a lot of the guys, I think most of the guys have been to New Orleans, but we just had the downtime in New Orleans. There wasn't actually a game. We just kind of had 3 days because it was New Orleans. But that was a fun because it was the first one. Pacific Coast was fun. I mean, the Great Lakes Gridiron Tour was special because we had Lambeau Field, which is just if you've not been to Lambeau, it's a magical place to visit, and all the locals are so friendly and welcoming. And we'd managed to do a Madison game, a Badgers game in Madison the day before, which was a lot of fun. And we got to go to Chicago for a couple of nights, see a Bulls game. We got to go to Cleveland and see the Steelers Browns. There's the famous Mason Rudolph being smashed over the head with his own helmet by Myles Garrett game. We got to go then to Michigan and see a Michigan game, Michigan State at the Big House, and a Lions game. And we also saw the Hall of Fame in Ohio. So that was, I think that was the one we packed the most in. The only drawback, if you'd call it that, is that the whole region was hit by an Arctic blast that week. So it was about -20 the entire time we were there. But that kind of just seemed to add to to the authenticity of the trip. And Michigan especially, we got this tailgate that was about as authentic as it gets. It was basically in the backyard of a frat house where they'd set up beer pong and flip cup and heaters that caused a lot, luckily, of warmth for us to huddle around. But yeah, there was the drinks and the shots and things like that. And after about an hour and a half, most people weren't aware it was -20 anymore. But Ann Arbor and tailgating there is just another level experience. So I'd probably just put Great Lakes 2019 as probably my favorite one so far.
That looked unreal. I remember seeing like the videos on social media going, I'd love to be there, and I know you are going to New Orleans in the next month as well. It's a busy time, and one element which I think is really important as well, Ben, because we're hearing, I've heard rumors. They're just rumors. There's nothing ironclad here, but there's rumours that Germany could have 2 games next year, potentially one in Frankfurt, one in Munich. And I know you currently have a package up for the game in Munich this year. And I think anyone, if you're a fan in the UK, Ireland, or Europe especially, can attest to it's how difficult to get tickets for games now. I was proud to say I was 600,000th in the queue for Munich, and I did not get a ticket. And I've seen that you've, outsourced the odds and managed to get a fantastic sort of tour together there from Munich, and I'm presuming that's something that you'll plan to do over the next few years, especially if there's a couple of games next year.
We're looking forward to Munich and seeing how the lay of the land is, and I'm sure it'll be a great atmosphere at the Allianz Arena. But that's been an interesting one, and as you say, the ticket prices were just insane for it. It was we were fortunate to secure the inventory that we did, but it was very, very tough to do that. So we'll see, I think, over the coming years whether it'll become a bit easier after the sort of novelty of the first event's gone. But I think the Tom Brady factor was big in that as well. So we'll see. But yeah, Munich's gonna be fun, and Harry's taking that group out, and it'll be looking forward to spending a night in the old town, and it'll be fun.
Yeah, I definitely can't wait for that myself. Is there any tours, Ben, just over the next few months as we go into the business end of the season that you'd like to talk about? I know, and I'll say this for anyone listening, I went to my first Super Bowl in February, and I have to say, regardless of the price or the amount of time or whatever, you have to do it. If you're a fan, it's like the mecca of the whole sport. But Ben, I couldn't get over the experience, and I know you've got Super Bowl experiences available to book now for Arizona, and you will have expressions of interest available for Vegas the year after. But it really is, it's something that you cannot compare anything to, and I'd recommend anyone that's an NFL fan to, if you're going to do it once in your life or do it every year, just do it once, because you have to experience it.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat the cost involved in the Super Bowl. It's high, and it's been getting higher over the years, and that's that's kind of the market on tickets mainly. But you're right, it is like no other event, and it's not just the Super Bowl itself. That's kind of the culmination of a week of sort of football celebration, the festivities, and everyone's so upbeat and happy to be there, and you got stuff going on around the cities that they're hosting, and they always do a very good job as far as fan activations and things like that. So you have the Super Bowl experience, which I can happily spend a whole day in the convention center trying to miss field goals. And yeah, so we do a nice tour, I think, and yeah, we kind of do a Friday night welcome party, and then we have a really good tailgate before the Super Bowl. Because I think if you're doing the Super Bowl, you have to make sure that you do it right, and that's been very popular the last few years. So yeah, we're going to Arizona, and we have rooms still available for that, and I think the warm weather is always appealing in February anyway. We try to kind of pivot a little bit to people's needs, so we don't say this is the itinerary, this is what you're doing. It's kind of Friday's a free day, and we had some people that want to go to the Waste Management Phoenix Open, which is kind of one of the most raucous PGA Tour events in the US. They have that famous par 3 where people get there, and it's kind of like an NFL atmosphere. They get there early morning with their beer coolers at 6 a.m. and they sit there and line the grandstands and yeah, watch the shots come in all day. So that should be fun. And then yeah, the game itself, it's a great stadium there in Glendale. So so we're looking forward to that one. And I think the other one that you touched on, the Big Easy Tour, which is less than 2 weeks away. So LSU Alabama will be a lot of fun, and we're lucky to be joined by your friend and colleague Jeff Reinbold for that tour as well. And then 2 weeks later, it's the All Star Tour, which I was talking to Jeff about a few months ago, and I can't wait for that one. It's going to be because you never know when you put these tours in place how the games will shake down. And last year it was a great tour, the Gridiron Sunshine Tour, but we had 2 Jacksonville games who just got blown out at home in both games, and I think every home team actually got blown out in that, apart from Florida. So so this year we've got Thanksgiving, which is the Giants at the Cowboys, and suddenly that's looking like it could be a cracking game. So that worked out well, because you wouldn't normally think the Cowboys Giants, based on the last few years, would be a cracking game. But so that one's fun because you go to Dallas and you go to Fort Worth and you put the Stetsons on and you do the whole cowboy thing, and then Nashville is the next stop on that one, and that's just a great city in its own right. And it's Vanderbilt, but they're hosting Tennessee, who are one of the powerhouses in college football.
Man, this is stacked, mate. This is stacked. You got college, everything. This is nuts. It's great.
So then we've got the Titans Bengals, and the Titans are now sort of showing a bit of resilience. I'm hoping they'll be around about 500 by the time that they're hosting the Bengals, and the Bengals obviously are the Bengals, so that's kind of a fun team to watch anyway. And then you've got Monday night in Indianapolis. Now, the Colts are showing a bit of resistance now, but they're playing the Steelers, who are terrible. They're 2-5, but they travel in numbers, so you never know with the Steelers how they're going to do. And they could be in that game, who knows? And then finishing in Boston for the Patriots Bills. So, which again, with any Belichick team, you can never rule out. They're a team that I think are playing better than the sum of their parts, but their record's not bad, and they're playing a divisional rival in the Bills and Josh Allen. So I'm looking forward to that whole thing. I can't wait.
That's very tempting, I'm not going to lie. I love it, and we will put the link in the bio as well for that trip itself as well, folks, on the podcast and on the video as well. Ben, just sort of finally, I think the thing that sort of sticks out to me as someone that works on the league, but also as a fan as well, is Touchdown Trip's relationship with different fan groups. And I've seen there that Packers tour is sold out already, which I think sums up both the support that there is in the UK and Europe for the NFL at the moment, but also relationships that you've built up over the years with fan groups, and I think that's sort of a differentiating factor between yourselves and anyone else.
Yeah, we try to. I mean, it's really cliche 'cause saying that you're a fan first, but I really, I really am a fan first. I try to sell what I enjoy doing on a weekend, so and have loved doing, and I always felt that it was essential that anyone coming from the UK was going to uh, get that experience. I think you're cheating yourself if you don't get the full American game day experience, and that's helped by other fans, and they're so passionate and knowledgeable over here, the fan groups, and the UK Packers and Steve have been fantastic to work with, and they always surprise me because this year, we put the tour on, and I'm thinking, well, we might get 20 odd for this because they're playing in London. So, that'll probably take away from a few that want to go over. But yeah, it's sort of sold out in 2 weeks, and it was tremendous response. And I think, the double header of games was quite appealing too. But we've got the Bengals UK, so Who Day UK, I'll give a shout out to as well because they're going on their first fan trip in 2 weeks. So they're off out to Cincinnati. They're going to see a Bearcats game as well. And they're having a traditional 1 o'clock kickoff at Paul Brown Stadium too. But they can walk to the stadium from their hotel, and I'm very happy for them as well because they've had a lot of years in the wilderness of not very good football teams to watch, and they've stuck with them. And obviously made it to the Super Bowl last year, and again, I think that the Bengals are a team to watch. I think that they are getting themselves together. Had a good win yesterday, and I think they'll have a good weekend in Cincy.
I can attest that they're great guys, Bengals UK, and obviously the Packers fans as well. It's brilliant. I've talked to Steve before, and
Yep.
you couldn't be
Yep.
working with any better there. And I think as well, Ben, for people that are interested for the first time, you've got a platinum service award with FIFO, and like you've so many people with different reviews and great reviews of the products and services that you have, and it's great to see so many fans jump on board.
Yeah, no, we send those out. They are sort of unbiased reviews to make sure that we are. We want to get honest feedback from people, and luckily that's been largely very positive. So we're very proud to have got that award again. We can only be judged by people that entrust us with their trips, because these are, especially at the moment, with the issues we have with the dollar and the pound, and the issues we have with cost of living. People are working hard to do this and to make these trips possible. So we need to make sure that we deliver the best possible trips. And I do need to also mention, just because I'd mentioned a couple of fan groups, I cannot not mention other fan groups, because we've also got Gangrene UK, who and again another fan group that I'm very happy for, because when we
They're heading out next week, aren't they?
we've
Or
got the
am I
Jets.
wrong?
No, they're going at the end of the 25th. They'll be out just around Thanksgiving, just after Thanksgiving. I think they fly out on the Friday, so Black Friday. But they're going out for the Jets Bears game. But I'm very happy for them that they are now they're a team with a winning record. They're competing in the AFC East, and they're going to have New York around Christmas time. So for them, it's terrific. And also the Rams. Rams UK, they're going out as well for a doubleheader to see the Rams, surprisingly, but they'll get probably the best weather of all the fan groups.
Yeah, it'll definitely be warm there anyway. I can really attest, as someone that's done this before, how much I enjoyed my trip, and more so the sort of ease of experience. So I really enjoyed it, Ben, and it's been great to get to know you just over the last few years, and also just obviously thanks for your and Touchdown Trips continued support of Gridiron, and we massively appreciate you. I think for anyone listening to this podcast or watching the video, do check out the link below. You can get a custom trip, so you can get in touch and check out from the very, very bottom to the very, very top, and check out something that works for you. But for now, Ben, thanks very much for your time, man. And look, enjoy Thursday night. It's going to be a good night, potentially, for Ravens fans.
I'll try. Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
Anytime. Thank you.